Good stuff. Okay, so welcome everyone. Well done for joining us bang on time. We're here for another Allen Overy webinar session. I'm sorry if I look a little bit wetter than normal. I was out in the rain, but not to worry. I'm sure I'll dry off over the next hour. But well done for joining us. So spotlight on languages and looking into some key skills. So skills in the workplace. We've not really done so much of that before. So that'd be really interesting to hear of what key skills do our panelists use in the workplace, because they're where we want to be, I suppose, in terms of that career and that job that maybe you guys are looking for. And languages. Lots of young people talk to us about languages and having a passion for them. So today we're going to hopefully speak to some people who might incorporate that into their career, or indeed maybe have a passion for it and want to do more around that too. So hopefully you've got some questions for today. As ever, just a quick overview of Allen Overy, then we'll go straight into our panelists. We'll hear about their sort of backgrounds and how they got to where they are today and just find out about their roles. And then I'm going to pinpoint a couple of questions on them about skills and languages. And then that's the bit that you guys can get involved and ask them questions too. If you do have a good question, sorry, it doesn't have to be a good question. If you have a question, pop it in the Q&A box whenever you want to, and I'll make sure that I get to all of those. If you do want to jump the queue and there's lots of questions and you feel like you might not get yours asked, please do put your hand up and then you'll skip the queue and I'll let you speak. If it's something that you really want to passionately ask, that's absolutely fine. And I actually prefer it that way, but often young people maybe don't use that so much, which I understand. I'm happy to ask your question in the Q&A box. If there's anything else, put in the chat box, but don't put your questions in there because I won't be checking it quite so frequently. So guys, this is our 7th session with A&I, which is fantastic. Do write in the chat box if you've been on all of them. Maybe put in the chat box as well if you've seen all of them, because we do put them on YouTube. It's really good because those of you who have engaged with that amount of attendance, I suppose, we've got a bonus session for you next week. I'd love to include as many as I can onto that, but I really want to prioritize those who have been to all the sessions. So do put in the chat box if you've attended or seen all the sessions so far. It'd be pretty cool if you have. Good. Okay, so without further ado, it's myself and Sue from Allen Overy who've been on all of the sessions. She's still here with us if you've got any questions about Smart Start or work experience, if you're going into year 12 next year. But in terms of introductions, Sophie, I'll hand over to you first, please.
Hi there, I'm Sophie. I currently am a trainee at Allen Overy in DSF, which means Derivatives and Structured Finance. It's basically an area of the company that focuses on financial markets and financial products. But to be completely honest with you, I think on my first day I wasn't entirely sure what it meant still. So it definitely takes a while and it covers lots of different areas. So Chris said I should talk about how I got here. So I originally studied German and Portuguese at Bristol, which I loved. And I didn't have the foresight that maybe you'll have to be on this call today, but I wasn't sure that I wanted to study law till I was about 21 or so. I then did a winter vacation scheme at A&O, so an internship essentially, which I really enjoyed and was very lucky to get a training contract. I then was sponsored, so A&O paid for me to do the GDL, which is a law conversion, converted my languages degree into a law degree. And then I had to do some more legal exams, and then I started. So the whole process from finishing uni to starting A&O was about 1.5 years. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Very glad I decided to do it. And I'm also very glad that I chose to study languages because I think it gave me a lot of skills that I still use indirectly in my job. And I don't feel at a disadvantage because I haven't studied law, but it would have been quicker and saved me a bit of money if I had.
But still don't regret it though, no? Is that right?
Yeah, no, still don't regret it.
Cool, awesome. Sophie, such a good intro. Guys, by the way, if you do want to ask Sophie a question and it's specific for Sophie, do please put this is a question for Sophie, and then I'll ask her it if you do want to do that. If you're not sure who to ask the question to, don't worry, I'll find someone to answer it. Sophie, thanks so much for kicking us off. Over to Lucy. Lucy. Is that working, Lucy?
Hi, sorry, yes.
Yeah,
I think I'm having some trouble with my internet connection.
We can come back to you if not, but we can hear you okay.
Is
Oh
this all
no, it's
right
not
now?
that
Oh,
great
sorry.
actually, Lucy. Should we come back to you if
Yeah,
there
I'll
might be a
try and
better?
sort that out.
Maybe there's a better place in your house. We'll see. This happens all the time. Not to worry. Hannah, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi everybody. My name's Hannah. So I'm a second seat trainee at A&O in a banking department. So that means basically I'm kind of 9 months into the programme, and you move for the first 2 years while you're studying your period of training. You move around every 6 months. So I came up through a very similar route to Sophie. So I studied German at Oxford, and kind of, I think in my last year had the kind of classic panic of, okay, great, this is all, having a great time at university, but what are you actually going to do? And I kind of just went around a couple of the different careers fairs and, kind of looked at careers in banking or kind of careers in consulting, and just thought that law kind of matched my skill set a little bit more, having studied languages, and obviously you're doing translations or writing lots of essays. So I think I thought I was kind of more worthy, if that makes sense, than mathsy. So I then kind of in my last year did a kind of summer vacation scheme, which I think, as Sophie kind of explained, is kind of like a 2-week mini internship, where you kind of sit with a practice group, and you kind of get a feel for kind of what being a trainee solicitor might be a bit like. And then I was kind of fortunate enough to get offered a place, and then I also underwent the law conversion course and then the LPC as well. So the law conversion is, I think, a year long, and then the LPC, which is kind of the solicitor specific course at university, which you have to do to become a lawyer. I think also if you want to be a barrister, you do the bar. And with A&O, you do that in 6 months rather than typically, I think, that's kind of a year long process as well. And then obviously, 9 months in, here I am.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Hannah. And University of Oxford, that's pretty cool. Whereabouts did you grow up, out of interest?
So I'm from northwest England, so I'm from Lancashire. I don't know whether anyone listening is a northerner as well. Near Preston.
Oh, good on you. That's awesome. Okay, great overview. Great university as well. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions around that. So we've got 2 German and Portuguese, and we've got a German, German in both of those. So interesting choices of degrees. Let's move on to Carolina now, shall we?
Hello everyone, and I suppose I will be part of the German theme, but let me get back to that. I work in the litigation department, and specifically in the international arbitration group of Allen Overy. And for those of you who don't know what arbitration is, and I think certainly at your age I have not heard anything or much about arbitration. So arbitration is a mechanism of resolving disputes, and it's an alternative mechanism to litigation and to going to court. So instead of going before a judge, you go to a tribunal that is constituted either of 1 or 3 arbitrators that is chosen by the parties. And I'm originally Polish, and I only came to the UK when I was 18 to obtain my university degree. I went to the University of Nottingham, and I combined law and languages. So I studied law and German. So you can see that Polish, English, and German have played quite an important role in my life. And I look forward to speaking to you today about how you can use passion for languages to your advantage.
Fantastic. And did you do the sort of law conversion? You didn't have to do the law conversion, of course.
I didn't, yeah. So what I did was I did the core modules during my degree, which then exempts you from doing the law conversion. And then after doing a similar internship or a vacation scheme, which I did both in England and Germany, thanks to my German, I got a training contract offer at A&O. I did my training contract, and now I'm a qualified lawyer.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. That's really interesting. And we've got to come back now to Lucy, if that's working for you, Lucy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly. Don't worry about the video if that helps. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
Don't worry.
So I studied law and French law at the University of Sheffield.
Sorry, I've got a little echo going on.
Oh no, but it's fine our end.
Gosh, this is so bad.
Um,
Is that better?
well, oh no, now we can hear the echo.
No, okay.
I'm just thinking, could you maybe dial in on your phone instead?
I am on my phone now, which is
we can hear you fine now.
Okay, all right, I'll try and ignore the echo, but that's
okay,
fine.
Maybe keep it short. Yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah, so I did law and French law at the University of Sheffield. So I spent a year in Bordeaux studying French law out there at university. So I did a master's in intellectual property law. While I was there, I did the first year of the Master 2 program. And then that really helped me with looking at two different legal systems. And seeing as Allen Overy is an international firm, I did start looking and applying to firms with different offices, with a view to kind of hopefully gain exposure to different legal systems. So I did a vacation scheme similar to Sophie, and then got a training contract off the back of that. And now I'm sat in securitization, which is part of the ICM International Capital Markets team. And that's essentially where you take a group of assets and issue securities off the back of those that can be traded on the capital markets and used to raise finance for firms and companies.
Okay, brilliant. And so vacation scheme again then, Lucy, is that what I should be doing if I'm going to university? Do I have to try and get on one of these vacation schemes to try and get into A&O?
It's normally half and half from our experience on our cohort of people that did vacations and didn't. I think it's a really good way of figuring out if a firm suits you and if you get on with their culture and you can see yourself working there.
Okay, brilliant. And we'll come on to that if anyone else has got any more opinions on that in a second. But great introductions from the girls. I'm outnumbered again in one of these sessions. So now let's look into languages. So hopefully you're making some notes there. I certainly was, about the different types of degrees that they have done, all involving languages, which is really interesting. So Sophie, let's come to you first then. So right, key skills that you use at A&O. Then specifically, we're interested to find out about how languages has had a part to play in your career to date.
Yeah, sadly, I'm only 3 months into my time working at A&O, and I have not used my languages to date. But I think partly that's to do with COVID and lots of disruption. And I think maybe using languages is more to do with, you know, having more interaction with clients and maybe traveling a bit more, which obviously isn't as easy at the moment. In terms of getting my job at A&O, languages were really important because my first real exposure to law was when I was doing my year abroad in Germany, and I worked at a German law firm, which I really enjoyed. And I mean, German law, I'm sure Carolina knows a lot more than I do, but is a lot of the legal language is quite complex, which is definitely something to bear in mind when using languages at work. You can be fluent, but still not have a clue about all the jargon necessarily.
Are you fluent in German, Sophie?
I was when I finished my degree, but that was sadly 2 years ago now. So I think my brain is slowly forgetting it. It's something on my to-do list to, spend more time working on it. And then the other question was about skills, wasn't it?
Yes.
So talking about communication. So languages, obviously, I think doing a year abroad and arriving in a country, especially if you're working, which I think you can do on most years abroad, and having to communicate in a foreign language in a workplace for the first time is great at improving your communication skills. Definitely helped mine. And it also made things like an interview at A&O less scary. But I'd say communication is a key skill throughout. In terms of actually getting a job, doing the interview, it's super important. I think people maybe put too much emphasis on having excellent commercial awareness or knowing the law inside out, when in reality, you'll get trained in all of that. What matters at the beginning is that you can communicate and, you know, be presentable, be chatty. I really don't think that should be underestimated. I think also then when you start your job, the kind of work you do depends on how good you are reaching out to other people, networking, getting exposure to different areas of the firms, and just on a day-to-day level, communicating with your boss, your colleagues about how busy you are, how much time you have, I think has a huge impact on how much you can enjoy work. So yeah, I think communication has a big role throughout.
And a couple of questions that have come up here, Sophie, saying how easy or difficult was it to find opportunities for vacation schemes?
What I would really recommend is doing a winter vacation scheme, which is what I did, because they are generally a bit less competitive. But yeah, I think vacation schemes are obviously difficult to get, but the earlier you apply, the better. So good to be really organised. And also, yeah, I think getting a vacation scheme means you often then get an opportunity to interview for a job, whereas just going straight for a job interview is more difficult. That's more competitive. So although it is difficult and it is hard work to get a vacation scheme, I think it's definitely the easiest route that there is to getting a job. And they're competitive because you can get a lot from them.
Go on, Hannah.
So there are also kind of, even prior to the vacation scheme processes, typically you would do a vacation scheme in your kind of second to last year at university. So obviously if you're doing a 3-year degree, that being your second year, and if you're doing a 4-year degree, that being your 3rd year. But a lot of kind of the big city firms offer, you know, first year schemes, which can be a good springboard kind of into a vacation scheme and then ultimately a training contract. So I think, you know, that's quite a good entry point to explore. And I know definitely A&O have one of those schemes. Yeah.
Guys, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, just making sure. I just had an error. Thanks very much, Hannah, for that. No, really good insight. Sophie, while we've got you here, we've got another question saying, how would you compare the strengths and weaknesses of taking something else, then starting the conversion course with taking law from without, oh, that's a difficult question to read, guys. I think they're asking how hard is it to go from potentially not studying law into doing law?
I think it's not too bad, to be honest, because I mean, obviously it has some tricky moments and a lot of exams, and I don't know about you, but I hate exams and I'm glad to be done with them. But I think when you start the law conversion, everyone doing it has never studied law before. Also, bearing in mind when you do the vacation scheme or the job interview, people are very aware of the fact you haven't studied law, if that's the case. And then also doing the LPC, so the final bit of training, they know the level of knowledge you have. So I think at every step, I mean, it's obviously not the easiest, but I think everyone's in a good position to do it because you've studied languages or whatever your background is. I don't think people are at a disadvantage.
Okay, good stuff. Sophie, thanks very much. And what I'll ask you to do when I just move on, have a look at the Q&A box and the question from Andre, and I'll ask you to read that out when I come back to you next, because it's got a bit of German in it for you there, which I do not want to take on. Lucy, over to you next, please. Lucy, if your system's working okay.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, perfect.
Lovely. So I think one of the key skills that I've found has really helped me at A&O so far, and that is continually developing, is definitely organisational and time management skills. You often have quite a lot of work and different work streams going on at once, and it is really important that you can stay on top of that and keep track of deadlines. Just because you tend to be at some points in ICM, you kind of are running and managing a deal, which is excellent experience, but can get quite overwhelming. So you do need to go in there knowing what's going on and being organised, essentially. And I think studying languages, although it can sound like quite a reach, because I did that alongside my law degree, I was very used to dividing my time and prioritizing and keeping track of different things. And I think particularly at interview, you need to have a way of showing that you can do that, because it is a really important skill for a trainee to have. So just being able to demonstrate that, and I think doing a year abroad, studying 2 different things at once did really help that.
Yeah, we've got a question. Oh, sorry, go for it, Lucy.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah, I've got a question linking to the interview, actually saying, did your language skills help you in the interview process for your vacation scheme? Did it separate you from the other candidates? And if so, how much of an advantage did it provide?
I think it definitely did act as a differentiator. I think one of the hardest things with getting a vacation scheme, particularly because of the sheer volume of applications that they receive, anything that you have that just makes you jump out a little bit, be that, you know, a sport that you've done or a language you've studied or a gap year, things like that do really jump out and can spark conversation and rapport, which is really nice to establish. I remember my interviewer also spent quite a lot of time in France. So when he found out I was studying in Bordeaux, we had a really nice conversation off the back of that. And I think you do need to try and be remembered a little bit, and studying languages and having those different connections can really help.
Definitely. Guys, do put in the chat box, please, if you're thinking of studying a language or you are going to go and study a language at uni. You know, it'd be interesting to know. One question here actually is saying, Lucy, again for you, saying, I do speak another language at home, but do not wish to take it further. Should I add it to my personal statement, etc., as I haven't done so, or is it worth not adding, basically? Yeah, should they add it? Should they talk about it?
I definitely don't think you lose anything by adding it. You can only kind of gain things from that you can show that you have an extra skill. And even if you're not planning on taking it further, it doesn't mean that it doesn't prove that your brain can think in a different way and that you can perceive things differently and you've had exposure to this other language. So definitely put that on. And as long as, I think it's really important that you try and keep it up, as hard as that is, in your own time, because it is so sad once you've built a level of a language and then you can feel it's kind of starting to slip away a bit. So I think definitely having that and continuing to try and work on that.
And I think that's advice.
Always a good thing.
That's advice. Sophie sounds like she's taking over COVID-19. Hey, I'm just going to jump around a bit here. Carolina, obviously coming from Poland, do you want to answer that question potentially? Because surely, maybe if I have another language that I don't really think I should put on my CV, surely I should put it on my CV. It's a talking point, isn't it?
Yes, and I would put any languages that you speak, irrespective of the level, on your CV. What I do with my CV is, I always indicate the level of fluency in the relevant language that I speak. You definitely don't lose anything, as the other panelists have said, and I think this is quite the contrary. There is this extra dimension of your experience and of your skills. And for example, I haven't really thought that I would be using Polish at ANO because it's a language that, apart from the Polish people, no one really speaks or needs. But then I was working on a case where the Polish legislation was at stake. And then we did have translation firms which could provide translation of that legislation for us. But that required time, and my Polish skills allowed the team to get an understanding of the key parts of the legislation really quickly without, having to translate tons and tons of content. So you really don't know when this skill will come handy.
No, definitely. And Lucy, one more question before we go on to Hannah.
Yeah.
Lucy, is there a particular language that Magic Circle law firms look for? I want to start studying a new language, but I am not sure which. Good question.
No, there definitely isn't a certain language that they're looking for. There does tend to be quite a broad range, and particularly because we have people from all over the world working with us. People do bring all sorts of languages, from Arabic, Mandarin, Russian. There are such a varied number of languages. And I definitely think if you are planning on taking another one up, I know at Sheffield they offered for people to do 3 languages and study 3 languages alongside each other, which I always think was really, really, really cool and such a good opportunity.
No, brilliant. Okay, thanks so much. Hannah, I'm going to come to you next. Your chance to answer the questions.
Great. I think, kind of one of the key skills I use day to day is, obviously legal documents require a lot of, drafting. Obviously, I guess if you've ever seen like terms and conditions or a contract or anything, it requires you to be very good with just language quite generally, and to have a good understanding of language structures, and just be generally quite articulate. And I think definitely that's something that it's kind of more transferable skills to my degree. I agree that I wouldn't use my German on necessarily a day-to-day basis at work. I've had the opportunity kind of to translate things as and when kind of German things have come up, but I definitely kind of feel, at university, one of the main things you do, if you're considering that, I'm sure you do the same at A level. You have, parts of your course are translation, and I definitely feel it's essentially the same thing when, you're trying to think, okay, well, how can this be expressed in a legal way? And, you're applying those frameworks. So I'd say that's kind of, one of the key skills really that I use on a day-to-day basis. In terms of how it's kind of generally fed into my legal career, I completely agree with what the others have said, that in the sense that kind of actually getting to the training contract stage and getting that offer, having the international experience hugely played into that. I think, by the nature of kind of Allen Overy's work, they are, one of the truly kind of global firms, if you like, and they have offices in, 40 odd different countries, and kind of every aspect of work, that you work on whilst you're here, there's not just an English law component, but there's a German law component, there's an American law component, there's a Spanish law component or a Portuguese law component. Kind of one thing I'm working on at the moment, there are 5 different jurisdictions, and one thing I worked on in my last seat, there were like 36 different jurisdictions. So kind of by default, you are kind of, the work you're doing day to day is very international. And I think if you have languages, and if you have studied languages, then you will have lived abroad as part of your year abroad. It kind of makes it a lot easier to make the case when you're asked in an interview scenario, why not only law, but why international law? And you can say, well, I'm an international person. I don't know, that sounds a bit cheesy, but in maybe, you can say, I think when I was interviewed, I'd just come back from living in Vienna, and I knew that kind of a big part of A&O's growth scheme was maybe expanding their German practice. So I was able to say, well, this is literally kind of right up my street. You're looking to kind of get better in Germany and boost that, and that obviously I have that experience. So I think it's kind of, yeah, albeit not, I don't directly use everything that I kind of acquired in my degree. Definitely everything has, it is hugely transferable.
And Hannah, you did a summer vacation scheme versus Sophie, who did the winter. I just wondered if you tried to do both, or what was your thinking behind doing the summer?
So I think the thinking behind doing my summer was purely that I was in my final year, and the summer one was kind of after my final exams. So I just kind of wanted to be able to almost, I think I thought if I did a winter scheme, I had stuff like a dissertation due, shortly afterwards. I just didn't want to take the time out for my academic year. I think this is a general trend, although not exclusive. I think it's definitely worth, if you're unsure of kind of which one to apply for, definitely speak with kind of the HR for each firm. But I think often the winter schemes are, are maybe, not more kind of non-law students, and then often in the summer schemes, generally they're kind of second year law students. Though this obviously isn't always the case because I did a summer scheme and obviously I was a non-law student. But sometimes schemes are structured a bit like that. So I think it's always worth, you know, asking the question, because obviously the scheme just might be a bit more geared towards, you know, people with non-law backgrounds, or some might be geared towards people with more of a legal background. So, you know, I wasn't at any disadvantage, but it's definitely worth kind of, you know, reading around and seeing what, you know, what the different schemes offer.
A couple more questions for you, Hannah. Hannah, is there a particular country you would recommend taking a year abroad during university?
I think it really depends what you want to do in your year abroad. I think, you know, obviously I'm conscious that everybody is doing, you know, probably studying different types of languages. I think for example, I was a teaching assistant on my year abroad. So I, you know, worked for the British Council. And I mean, I've never been to Austria before, but I think it literally came down to that they offered a bit more money in Austria than Germany. And I just quite fancied, you know, I think I got a bit more Erasmus and I got a bit more kind of, the British Council paid that. And I thought, you know, why, I thought, okay, I'll take an Austrian accent if I can, you know, if I can have a slightly nicer flat. So that was what it literally came down to for me. So I think, you know, for example, if you study Spanish, you'll have the opportunity to go to South America, which I was really jealous of. You know, I think it was great for me being in Germany or Austria, you know, during Christmas time with the Christmas markets, but certainly when it came to the summer and my friends were in Spain or in South America on a beach, you know, I was maybe slightly jealous. But I think, you know, you just kind of have to think, what do you actually want to do? Do you want to study on your year abroad? Because, you know, the university you go to will have partnerships with different universities across the different countries, or, you know, in different areas, which will probably influence your decision. And yeah, do you want to work? And if so, obviously, maybe if you wanted to do more of a, you know, corporate internship, you're probably going to be drawn towards a big city. Yeah, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah,
good stuff. And just one more while I've got you is from Neem, who's actually been on all these sessions. So well done, Neem. A good question. What is the typical outline of a vacation scheme?
Good question. So I think so generally a lot are 2 weeks. Some of them I think can be a little bit longer. You have like a trainer, so you're paired with a supervisor, which kind of mirrors the setup as a trainee. So you are based with one or maybe two departments. Some firms kind of rotate you each week. You know, you get to choose which department you'd like to go to, and so you share an office with that supervisor, and obviously they will kind of give you tasks. So the majority of the time, you know, you'll probably spend doing that, which I think is really good, because obviously you get kind of a feeler of what, you know, the setup will be like. Obviously a bit different during a COVID environment and working from home. But then also, you know, there are different tasks. So you might be involved in a group project and presentation that you have to work towards. You know, you get lots of different talks and different practice areas. So, you know, all the different departments in the firm, you know, might have kind of a working lunch session, you know, so you get to find out there. There are also lots of different networking events. So in the evenings, you know, there's social events, whether or not that be for like the Women's Society or the BAME community, or just generally, you know, all of the people on the vacation scheme, for example. You also have a trainee buddy, so there'll be someone who is, you know, a trainee, so kind of like any of us kind of here now, and they'll kind of check in with you in regular intervals. So, you know, you'll maybe grabbing coffees with them. They can introduce you to different people if you're interested in. And, you know, say you're interested in a different area that you're not, you know, if you're sat in one department and you'd like to find out a little bit more, you know, maybe you can kind of meet up with someone and learn a bit more about that. So yeah, it's a really good way to kind of just, you know, learn a bit more about, you know, what A&O or what kind of city law is all about.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Hannah. And it does relate back to what Sophie was saying about communication skills and making the most of these opportunities, as I'm sure all these young ladies have done in terms of getting to where they are at the moment, and obviously being very successful. So maximising those opportunities. Carolina, sorry, last but not least, over to you then. So some of your key skills and then looking at languages specifically as well.
Sure. So I think in terms of key skills, what is really important are the analytical skills. And just to give you some background, so as a lawyer, you're expected to read volumes and volumes of documents and then distill the key principles or information that is at the heart of, you know, either a legal conflict if you're working for a disputes department, or a transaction and a negotiation. So by way of example, recently on one of my cases, I had to read probably over 2,000 documents and just summarize for my team and for the client the parts that really matter. And those were only probably 80 pages. And then if you think about it, if you study languages, you do really hone your analytical skills and then understanding of, you know, what the text says. And you also have to, you know, analyze, be it literature or, you know, other areas in a different language, which is even more difficult. So this certainly helps. When it comes to the languages, so they have played a huge part in my life, and, you know, certainly I would not be sitting where I am now but for my languages. So as I said, I did my year abroad in Germany, and then German helped me to get internships that then strengthened my position when applying. And, you know, I think we've been talking about applying language skills in the sort of very obvious way, meaning, you know, you have a document in a different language, or, you know, you're translating something. But I think what's also really important to remember is that whenever you learn a language, you learn so much about the culture of that country or a region, when we talk about Spanish, for example. And you get this appreciation and sensitivity to other cultures and how they communicate and express themselves. So, for example, Polish and German tend to be regarded as some of the more direct languages, whereas English is very, you know, very understated and sort of very diplomatic language. And, you know, when you maybe confront an English person and a Polish person who haven't had much appreciation for the other culture, then, you know, an English person may think, oh, this Polish person is really rude because they're so direct. Whereas, you know, this is definitely not the case. And it's more about conveying the message clearly and efficiently and avoiding any miscommunication. So I think if you've learned any other foreign language, you very soon become aware of that. And then this is really important because, you know, as other panelists have mentioned, if you want to work for an international law firm, and, you know, even in Europe, matters become cross-border, and in the age of globalization, more likely than not, there will be a foreign element. And in order to ensure that, you know, a transaction or a negotiation is going smoothly, you need to understand where those people are coming from. And, you know, sometimes what they say does not only need to be, it does not need to necessarily be what they really mean. And I think you get this ability to read in between the lines, and, you know, and just be more open-minded and see that there is not always one solution of getting something right. So yeah.
Brilliant, Caroline. I've got a question here. You might be able to answer it, saying, should I add BSL, British Sign Language, I wish I could do that, to my CV? Is that something that could prove useful in a law firm as big as Allen Overy? I don't know if anyone's come across that, maybe, in your time.
I haven't come across it, but again, it's a skill. And, yeah, you know, there is much to do in terms of diversity, and, you know, having such a skill definitely improves the diversity. So I would definitely include it. And maybe, you know, I think there was another question as to which language one should choose if they're thinking about learning a new language. I do agree that, you know, it probably there is a lot of scope to choose whichever language you want to learn. But if you want to be strategic about it, you may want to think, which are the economies that are developing faster? What languages are the most widely spoken? For example, Spanish. Another issue to take into account is how difficult a language is. So you've got a family of languages which are tonal languages like Mandarin, and they're extremely difficult. So for you to become fluent in such a language, it's going to be a real challenge. So I think when you make this decision, just maybe think a couple of years ahead and think where you want to be and what is the focus of that particular industry in geographical terms. And maybe this will allow you to make a more informed and strategic decision.
No, it's good advice. I'm not sure if anyone can help with this one. I'll start with you, Carolina, potentially. Question. I currently have an offer from KCL for English, but have discovered that I want to do law. Well done. Should I do a gap year with the hope of getting a law degree after, or take my current offer? This is a very specific question, so maybe leave till the end. I don't mind if you don't answer this.
It's difficult to give you a definitive answer because you need to do what's right for you. But maybe I can give you some questions that you can think of, and they will be helpful in informing your final choice. So I think the first one is whether you want to study law because you like the academic aspect of it, or you like the sound of academic aspect of it. Because if you want to become a lawyer, you don't need to have studied law. As you can see, 2 of us studied law with a language on this call, 2 of us have not studied law at all. And if you study English, you get very good drafting skills, because you would have written a lot of essays. So your written communication skills will be excellent. I think another question is, whether you want to do a gap year, and think about the source of your funding, because, you might be in a lucky position where you don't really need to worry about it. And, when you do a gap year, think what you can get out of it. I think at the moment, the problem is that with the COVID and lockdown, it might be more difficult to, do a year of traveling or to go somewhere else to work. So take all of those aspects into account. But I think the bottom line is, if you want to become a lawyer, doing an English language degree can be an advantage, and you don't need to have studied.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Thanks so much, Caroline. I can't believe where the time's gone. I've just realised it's 1:45. Sophie, I'm going to come back to you. Could you read out that question that has been asked by Andre, perhaps, and answer it, please? Can you see it in the Q&A, and just to unmute yourself as well?
Sorry about that. Didn't realise I was unmuted. Sorry if there's pinging in the background. It's my messenger system.
No problem.
So I assume it's this one from Andre. Hello, Sophie. Wie geht es dir? Andre. I'm an A-level student who also does German, and I'm wanting to do law at uni. How do you compare your experience in Germany to that in England from a legal perspective? German law the system is very, very different from the English one, so definitely something to bear in mind if you think about going to study in Germany. In terms of studying in Germany, I was friends with quite a few students out there, and it's a lot cheaper. I think you only pay less than £1,000 a year, and there's more subsidies, so something to bear in mind. But in terms of becoming a lawyer in Germany, it has a much higher failure rate. So I think there are 2 sets of big exams, and I can't remember, maybe 1/3 of people fail, I don't know. So it's pretty tricky.
Not sounding good.
No. There are always like horror stories of my friend, he spent 7 years studying law and then failed the last exam or something.
Sophie, you're killing Andre's dreams here.
No, it's good though, because it's so much easier in England. When I
Right,
told
okay.
people you just study it for 3 years, they're like, surely not. But yeah, in terms of studying in Germany, there are like advantages as well. So it's a lot more decentralized. So, you know, the big law firms, if that's what you want to do, and in lots of different cities, they're not all in one city like they are in the UK, like, you know, focused in London. And also being a lawyer, like I said, if you actually do pass the exams in Germany, then you're in a very good position.
Okay,
So,
good stuff. No, thank you, Sophie. Carolina, were you going to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just about to add that, you know, when you finish your law degree in Germany, you're probably around 30, because it just takes such a long time. And the German law students during my Erasmus year, they were quite jealous because in England you can be done with your bachelor's degree after 3 years. So yeah, I think I would recommend doing English law degree, also because if you're an English qualified lawyer, you can work in multiple jurisdictions because English law is very well regarded amongst businesses. So you may have 2 German parties signing up to an English law contract. And this is why, for example, the German A&O offices, they also work on English law transactions. So you can be an English lawyer and still work in Germany if this is what you want. But then again, you can then work in Singapore or Madrid or in a number of other jurisdictions. So I think English law is more versatile.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. That's great. Lucy, I'm just going to pop this one to you potentially. It's about secondment. So does A&O offer the chance to do an international secondment during the training contract? I'm not sure if you're aware of that at all.
Yes, so they're pretty popular. I think generally between 60 and 70% of trainees go on secondment, and you can either do client secondment or international secondment, and that usually happens at the end of your training contract. So in your 4th seat, the final 6 months, you can go and spend in one of the other offices, and Allen Overy pay for your accommodation over there, which is really cool. The opportunities tend to vary from year to year, so it depends on that, in that time period, what's available as to where you can go. But generally there tends to be a few in New York, a few in Singapore, Dubai. I think there's usually one in Germany and one at the Madrid office as well. But you can't say for definite which ones are going to be available, but there does tend to be quite a range. So yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks very much, Lucy. Hannah, I'm going to tee you up in a second. There's the last one in the Q&A box just to come to and have a think about that around studying in New York, and just have a little think about that. But Carolina, this one might be good for you from Shabazz. Well, I think Shabazz is off to JP Morgan actually, so he's got a bright future ahead of him, really intelligent bloke. What do you believe is the most efficient way to learn a language, seeing as you've come from Poland, you've done your German and English as well?
So first of all, congratulations on your offer, and best of luck with it. I think learning a language depends very much on your learning style. So, you know, some people like using flashcards, some people just, you know, like making extensive notes. So on that level, you just need to know what works for you. One important thing is to be systematic about a language. So, you know, even if you spend just 20 minutes, but you spend it every day learning a language, it makes a massive difference. Another tip is to maybe choose your favorite TV series and watch it in that language. So for example, when I went to Madrid, I've been watching Narcos in Spanish, and I want to think that it did help my Spanish. And I think it's also important at the beginning, if you can, to do it as a part of a group, so that you try to improve both your vocabulary and grammar at the same time, and don't really lose sight of one or the other.
Okay, thanks so much, Caroline. Hannah, am I good to ask you this question, do you think? It's quite specific.
Yeah, sure. So somebody with a history background, and then obviously has done that kind of law conversion course. So yeah, a lot of London law firms, or even kind of American law firms based in the UK, do have American secondments. I think, for example, A&O last time round, so the batch of trainees that are currently there, 3 got the chance to go to New York. So it's usually kind of specific practice areas. So if you want to, do a specific type of banking law, obviously kind of New York is a really competitive place to go. But I guess, if you have some kind of experience or want to go back to that department, you're maybe more likely to get it. So if you were to do that kind of as part of the secondment process with, a British law, or, if you're looking to become English law qualified, then you wouldn't need to take any additional exams. That would just be included in your training, because you would still be practicing English law but abroad, if that makes sense. It's a bit confusing, but you are still kind of becoming English law qualified. Some people do take also the New York bar. It's quite popular, and that's kind of the American equivalent to the LPC. So that means you're also American, New York law qualified. But that's kind of no prerequisite, unless if you want to go out and, specifically practice law in the States. I don't have it. I'm not sure whether anyone on this panel has done the yes, some people have. But, it's definitely not, it's not by any means, you don't have to do that. I think if you wanted to look and have a more permanent legal career in the States, then yes. But if you're kind of, like I said, I would always, recommend, I think, doing the LPC and becoming English law qualified is so transferable. Kind of many legal systems, including, like the US legal system, they're all kind of based originally off the UK system. And that, makes it a really kind of transferable career, whether or not you want to stay in law and work internationally, or, leave law and work, for a big company or something like that. So yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Hannah. It's interesting. I wonder if anyone here does want to end up working in another country to where they are at the moment. Any of the panel?
I would love to do a secondment. I'm not sure kind of about, I'm not permanently, but I would love to, go. Obviously, there's a lot of kind of Far East secondments, so Singapore. I'd love to do those, or even stay in Europe. I think would be nice. I think it's great. Why not go abroad? Yeah, it can be all part of the process.
No, it's amazing. And I guess working for a big company like A&O gives you that advantage, doesn't it? It sounds amazing. Guys, I just want to get your views, because we're going to have to wrap up. Please put in the chat box. This is to the students, not the panelists. Sorry. Just what you thought of the session, really. Anything that you took away from it. Lots of language questions. It is great to do. We've never done this before, but I really hope it was useful, because I do know a lot of you on the sessions, are keen on looking down this as a potential avenue. But I also think it's great, the likes of Shabazz and different people I'm seeing on it, who potentially have already got a job or an apprenticeship or an opportunity elsewhere, but still furthering their learning. One thing about the legal career is that it just links into so many things in the city, that I think it's great that we're having this insight from all these really intelligent panelists. We've got one more question here. I'm not sure if anybody's picked this up yet or who might be able to answer it, but what has been your favorite TC seat so far? Has your love of foreign languages impacted that preference? I'm not sure if anyone can answer that. TC seat, I'm not sure what that is.
As I'm in my second seat, so I guess I'm kind of 9 months in, so I've had the experience of kind of 2 departments. I don't know, it's hard to say kind of which is my favourite. I think, so I was in a corporate seat, so that, I was in an M&A seat, so kind of the buying and selling of companies, whereas now I'm in kind of a banking seat, which is, huge corporate loans, so I think the work is quite similar. I think kind of what impacts, whether you like a type of work is more, I guess it's very different. Obviously, if you're working in like a litigation seat, which is more kind of lawyery, if that makes sense, because you're dealing with disputes and kind of processing things through a court, versus transactional work, which is, when one company wants to buy another company or give a loan to another company and they just need you know, the contract to be in ship shape. So I think kind of less my actual direct language experience and more, you know, do you enjoy the fact that you're kind of in, you know, something that's gone wrong and you want to get it right, or if you kind of want something where kind of all parties have one goal and want to work towards that goal. And, you know, I think that kind of approaches, that kind of influences whether or not you like a certain piece of work. I'm not sure whether anyone else can speak to that. I hope that makes sense.
No, I think it's really good. And with the sake of just a couple of minutes left, I just want to go through, because I think you've all been really great panelists and been so articulate in what you've demonstrated and said today. Just want to go around and just really your last top tips for young people, really briefly and concisely, just top tips for those students on the webinar today. I'll come to Lucy first in a second, but just to mention, next week, guys, we have got the bonus session with someone really high up at Allen Overy, the CTO. For those of you who have been on all the sessions, and for those of you who have seen all the sessions, please email in to pathway. Sorry, bear with me. What is it? I need to move my box. student@pathwayctm.com. Email in just saying, you know, the fact that you've been on all of them, or that you have seen all of them and you want to get on it, and we'll make sure that we invite you to that, because that's our bonus session for those of you who want a bit of an intimate session to ask someone quite high up how they got there and how they find their job, really. Lucy, final bits of wisdom for the students on the session today?
Yeah, so I think just keep researching. I mean, the fact that you're on this call and you've attended all these sessions in itself is amazing, and you're already starting to think about your career and what you might want to do. And I think that you just can't get enough information when you're looking at this. So definitely there's so many opportunities out there, and just keep researching and trying different things and seeing what you enjoy.
Brilliant. And Carolina, over to you.
I would say stay resilient. I think, you know, we're facing now recession and crisis, and it is really important for you to develop those extra skills, and you'll probably have more time on your hands right now. If you look online, there are a lot of courses that are available free of charge. You can also download apps. If you can't join an online study group, such as, I don't know, Duolingo, maybe, you know, if you're interested in learning a language, even buy yourself a beginner's book to learn that language, and really try to think how you can make the best use of this time. And
fantastic. No, thanks, Carolina. And Hannah, over to you.
I think just do what you enjoy, because then everything else kind of works itself out along the way. You know, if you're, for example, between English and law, but you think you really, really want to do law, well, you know, you're going to enjoy it a lot more, and you're going to do better. You know, you're going to get a better score in your degree because you love it and you enjoy doing it. You know, so I think, you know, just if you just do what you want to do and try and enjoy it as much as you can, everything else kind of works itself out. Yeah, I hope that.
That is good. Thank you, Hannah. And last but not least, Sophie.
Hi, I'd say stay open-minded. I think, like Carolina was saying, it's, you know, a difficult time, but equally difficult means there's more opportunities. You just got to stay open-minded and curious and flexible. And I'm sure if you have the right mindset, opportunities will come your way. And then the other thing is, as part of that, just talk to as many people as possible. Because like Lucy was saying, research is so great. But for example, the other day I was toying with the idea of maybe putting down a practice area. And then I ended up speaking to someone I know who practiced that area of law, and I thought, that sounds awful. And I'd spent ages on Google looking at it, and I thought it was right up my street, but I decided the opposite the moment I'd actually heard what day-to-day life was like. So yeah, I'd say talk to as many people as possible and stay open-minded.
I'm just thanking you guys on note. I can't multitask. Like guys, thanks so much for that. Well done, students, for showing up and showing some great questions. To our panelists, really, really great to have you all on. Thanks so much. And hopefully get you on in years to come as you keep climbing the tree, and obviously you'll have successful careers. So congratulations for where you're at, and thanks again for your time.